Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome back to Allegedly. Today, we are talking about banks, about billions, and about the hospital heist that actually happened in Tembisa Hospital. I think the banks were very intentional about this whole situation. There is no way that the bank is able to flag and stop payments from forex traders, and yet they weren't able to stop payments or ask questions about 359 million, 209 million rand, and nothing is being flagged. That on its own, my people, is very suspicious. So South Africa's hospitals are under siege, okay? But not just by disease, Nana. Some of the biggest banks in the country, the ones that you trust, yes, to hold all your money safely. What if I told you that they are now being linked to one of the largest healthcare frauds that were ever uncovered? 437 million rand. That's the sum that was allegedly extracted from Tembisa Hospital, and this was through ghost companies that were connected to one man. What's his name? Stefan Govindraju. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a coordinated cover-up operation designed to protect the real masterminds. Govindraju, who invoked his rights against self-incrimination when questioned by media, suddenly found himself controlling companies that had funneled hundreds of millions of rands through fraudulent tenders. And some of the country's biggest banks, they, my people, allegedly helped make it happen. Yep. So you may be asking yourself how banks may have played a role in this whole thing. And let me answer you. Banks are supposed to be watchdogs. Yes, they must watch like hawks. They are intended to monitor suspicious activity. They are meant to flag unusual transfers, and they are also meant to prevent fraud. But when hundreds of millions are moving through multiple front companies, suddenly the system looks and keeps quiet. Quite convenient, is it? Investigations report that Big Five banks processed large sums from companies with no physical address. There is no operational history, and there is no legitimate medical supply contracts. Some companies even received payments while owing SARS millions in unpaid taxes. Now, just sit for a second and let that make sense. Let that sink in, because this on its own does not make sense according to me. It raises quite a lot of chilling questions, right? One of them being, were these banks actually simply being negligent? Or were they just being complicit? They must tell us, because the tax angle comes in this whole story. One of Stefan Govindraju's companies, the name of the company is Fulligenics, became a headline just now in 2025 in July. Why was it on the headlines? It's because it hadn't filed for tax returns, not even once, my people. Yet, it was receiving hundreds of millions of rands that came from state hospital payments. How does that even happen? So think about that. Just think about that for a second. A company can be non-compliant with tax laws, yet the banks still process payments that are worth millions. This is a classic loophole that is exploited by these fraudsters. Number one, they have ghost companies that generate invoices. Number two, they have banks that clear their funds. Number three, they have tax authorities that are being bypassed. Investigators, my people, are now also questioning how financial institutions didn't flag these anomalies in actual fact way sooner than now. I would say to you, we are focusing a lot on the police and how the judiciary is actually captured. But what about the financial institutions? Because clearly they're also running this particular game. What about SARS? Because it clearly is also having a very huge role to play in this entire web of criminals. The Big Five has definitely captured a whole lot of institutions. And maybe it would be overwhelming for us to think about the whole picture. But breaking it down and starting from the policing may be what they think is important. But I need to make you know and understand that it is not just policing. Mkwanazi stood up for the policing because that's what he deals with. But please send us another Jesus that comes from the financial institutions, or another Jesus that comes from SARS, because this is bigger than we thought. Now, I want us to talk about the red flags, okay? Red flag number 1. Here, we are talking about multiple companies that are controlled by the same person, the same addresses, the same directors, the same contact numbers, yet the banks kept transferring millions to them. How? Red flag number 2. The rapid ownership changes. Some companies actually switched directors within 48 hours. Yes, you heard me right. Within 2 days. This is a known tactic to hide beneficial ownership. Red flag number 3 is the structuring payments that were just below oversight thresholds. My people, banks are supposed to report suspicious transactions. Finish and glad. But if the amount is consistently under reporting threshold, nothing is going to happen, because you know what? The scammers and the fraudsters, Abo Matlala and Abo Govindraju, have gotten to understand that if it is under a reporting threshold, it will not raise alarms, simply because there's no need to be suspicious. So were they also doing this intentionally? I think so, because the system has people who know how the banks work. So in other words, all I'm going to say is the system was almost kind of engineered to fail in the first place. Truly. And another question could be, could banks be liable for what is currently happening? Because if banks have processed these payments while they were knowing, or maybe they were ignoring the red flags, they also could face serious questions. I mean, this is a legal question, and also reputationally, we must understand what actually happened here. Investigators have pointed out that banking compliance frameworks actually exist specifically to prevent exactly what is currently happening. They have compliance frameworks like, number 1, know your customer. That's the KYC checks. Number 2, they have an anti-money laundering reporting. That is the AML. And thirdly, they have the suspicious activity reports. These things, my people, are supposed to assist the bank in making sure that there is no issues when it comes to fraud in any of the accounts that they run. Yet, millions flowed through fully traceable accounts, while SARS flagged tax as non-compliance. It's either shocking incompetence, according to me, or there's nothing to explain it as, except for deliberate negligence. Who really is profiting from this whole thing? Truly. Where did the money go? Reports say it didn't just stop at the front companies. Funds were moved to multiple entities, some allegedly linked to Govindraju, others through proxy accounts, and eventually ended up in personal accounts that were able to have luxury purchases, or others being able to purchase and have offshore vehicles. Meanwhile, other players in this syndicate tried to distance themselves. Kat Matlala disappeared from public view. The Signarians went silent. Hospital executives were suspended but faced no criminal charges. The message was clear. The little fish would be thrown overboard, but the big sharks would swim away untouched. But justice, delayed, though it may be, was coming. And the banks, they kept processing, keeping the transaction fees while taxpayers lost hundreds of millions of rands. The taxpayers paid, the banks profited, and the hospitals, well, the hospitals kept running out of gloves and oxygen. And the bigger pattern that I want you to know and understand is the fact that Tembisa Hospital, my people, is just the tip of the iceberg. Investigators suspect similar structures in other Gauteng hospitals and government contracts. This is the dangerous intersection of state capture, private banking, and corporate greed. This is where the system that should protect citizens, banks, SARS, hospital procurements, instead become a tool to hide theft. And Stefan Govindraju, he's alleged to be the orchestrator of just one of these syndicates. We have Richard Mazubuko, we have Kat Matlala, we have Morgan Maumera, we have so many of them, Katiso Molefe, and many other people that we don't know by name that we are definitely going to be introduced to very soon because the SIU is hard at work. So here's the reality, my people. Allegedly, 437 million rand, hundreds of ghost companies, big banks that may have looked the other way, tax authorities that were bypassed. The system was exploited. And the questions remain. Who knew what? Who looked away? And will anyone ever be held accountable for this? Because make no mistake, for every Tembisa hospital exposed, there are dozens more still operating. For every Babita Deokaran who spoke out, there are hundreds more who remain silent out of fear. The question isn't whether corruption exists in South Africa. The question is whether we, as citizens, will demand the accountability that Babita Deokaran died trying to achieve. One thing is certain, my people. The banks can't claim ignorance forever. They will have to answer the questions. And soon.